RevOpsAF, the only podcast for people who are RevOpsAF and want to learn all about things that are RevOps AF.
Our goal is to give the revenue operations community, that includes marketing, sales, and CS, for any of you not paying attention, the skills needed to accelerate their careers.
Hello, everyone. This is Matthew Volm, CEO and co-founder of RevOps Co-op and co-host for RevOps AF. And today we are talking with Connor Fee, who is currently a fractional CRO to a variety of companies. Previously was the CRO at Shortcut and the CRO over at Clearbit, and has held a variety of other roles in his professional tenure. But Connor, I'll let you add anything to that personal and professional introduction. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, the count adds. It's like, oh, I was CRO once, and then all of a sudden it's you've been CRO 4 times, and people are like, oh, it's a 4-time CRO, and you're like, wow, how did that happen so fast? The quick story on me is I was actually an engineer by training, and when I founded my own startup, somebody had to do the sales and marketing part, and that person ended up being me. I got some good advisors along the way, and lo and behold, I ended up in other startups and a bunch of different sales, marketing, and customer success roles. The one trait that I did well is I was not afraid to raise my hand and say, I'll work on that hard problem over there. Turns out if you do that, people keep giving you more to do. Before you know it, you get to put big fancy letters in front of your title. I've been doing that for a number of years. I do some fractional stuff now, but the same gig, just in different flavors.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's how a lot of these things happen, whether it's by accident or not, but you certainly found your calling. And so today, I know one of the things that we want to hit on is the relationship between CROs and their RevOps counterparts. And I want to specifically get your thoughts on what you've seen from those in the past. Obviously, you've been a CRO, you've had RevOps teams before, and then also talk about what they should look like. So let's first start with the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer. What is the responsibility of a CRO? Let's start there.
We both know it's a terrible question, right? Because that title is applied to so many people in so many places in so many ways, right? I know CROs, when I first joined at Shortcut, I was the CRO of 3 people, right? And when I was at Clearbit, I had 55 under my staff, right? So, and I know there are CROs with 255 or 2,555 under their staff, right? And it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. I think some of the big differentiators for me of what is the CRO going to care about or think about or worry about. Does CRO just mean Chief Sales Officer? Sometimes it's just they run the sales org and that's that. Sometimes it means pre-sales, post-sales, account management, customer success, sales ops. And sometimes you get what I think of as the true classic CRO, which is like owning all of go-to-market from marketing, sales, pre-sales, post-sales, RevOps, the whole 9 yards. Those are the types of opportunities that I tend to get excited about and look at. I say that mostly from my viewpoint will come from. So with that in context, will you repeat the question for me so I don't answer something entirely different?
So I think you did just answer it, which is what's the job of a CRO? Okay. And I think your answer is like it depends. Like you've seen a couple of different flavors, but at least to you, it is ownership and accountability over the revenue engine from marketing to sales to post-sales. With that in mind, whether you base this answer on prior experiences that you've had at some of those companies I mentioned, current companies that you're currently advising, what are the main challenges that you as a CRO are either faced with today for the clients that you're working with or have been in the past? What are the things that keep you up at night?
I would say the problem that most people are trying to solve at any given point in time is how do we generate as much revenue as we can given the limitations and structure that we have. It's not like growth at all costs. I don't phrase that as efficiency is the primary gain. But at the end of the day, the charge that falls under me is, okay, you need to hit a revenue number and you need to hit it with the resources that you have available to you. You know, my background many years ago was I did the strategy consulting thing and I mentioned being an engineer. So I'm not afraid of the operating plan. I'm not afraid of the model, right? For me, there's only so many things that come into play, right? There's inputs that come from your marketing efforts or maybe your outbound efforts. There's activities that your teams do. There's things you do on calls, and ultimately you generate results. And so at any given point, the question is basically, can we generate more inputs or activities, or can we improve the efficiency of something to get the result we want? The reality is, if I'm being totally honest, the planning exercise looks a lot like, Here's the number we want you to hit. Holy, that's really
Yeah.
big, right? Okay, we'll go off and build the operating model and come back with, we can get to 80% of that. And then there's this tug of war that happens in between. But it's understanding, okay, what numbers and pieces do I need to fundamentally move in order to achieve the outcome that we want to achieve? And so then it's like, all right, we need to move 5 key numbers over the next 12 months to achieve that outcome. What are those 5 key numbers? Who owns them? What do we need to do? And what are the priorities and responsibilities that sort of get us there? And so I think in a lot of ways, my job is orchestration of those 5 numbers, who needs to be responsible for them, and to provide the accountability structure, strategy support to help make sure we can actually move numbers.
Yeah. And I like that you framed it through the lens of hitting a revenue number or a target and the different things that you can pull to get there, which I'll say imply, but I'll just explicitly state it as well, that like that's not just sales, right? Like obviously, like you said, generating more pipeline, assuming you're able to keep conversion rates and win rates, will drive more new business that you can add to revenue. But if you've lost more business than you've newly generated, you don't wind up any closer to your number. You've got new business, expansion, upsells, renewals. There's a lot of things there. And like you said, your job as the CRO is to look at those different metrics and KPIs that you can pull to drive the most value from the resources you have.
When we were at Clearbit, every month at the all hands, I would report on last month's performance and where we are tracking towards goals. But I didn't talk about the new business number. I talked about the number that was dollars retained plus dollars expanded plus new business. That was the revenue number. This is how much revenue we need to exit the quarter with to be on track to achieve the things we want to achieve. And look, sometimes you're going to miss in certain places. You're going to have to make it up in other places. And it's obviously not perfect, right? Because that, oh, maybe I came down over here, but it came up over here. It's like, fine, the revenue number's the same. Actually, what that did was increase your CAC, so that causes this problem. I think a good CRO, I used to always try to teach my functional leads, whether it's marketing or sales, you just have to know your business and understand the metrics that underlie your business so that you understand the trade-offs being made when something is working or not working, or you're putting money here, or you're shifting resources there. It's not as simple as a lot of people are coming up in their career think it's as simple as, oh, we need to hit the revenue number. We need to hit the lead number. We need to hit the opportunity number. We need to hit the renewal number. And it's never quite that simple. In a perfect world, we hit the renewal number here and here, because with that, it means that our CAC to LTV looks like this and our months to recover looks like this. So it's never as simple as it seems.
I guess with that in mind, I'll say you mentioned your background in engineering, strategy consulting. You've held a variety of functional roles, but you have a very operational mindset in terms of thinking about those levers, those inputs that ultimately drive the output. You've also mentioned a variety of companies that you've worked at where you've had teams of 3 to teams and everything in between. So as it relates to your operations teams in the past specifically, how have you gotten the most value from your RevOps teams? Do you have any examples of how they've supported you as the CRO going out to accomplish the things you just mentioned?
Yeah, this is a topic I've given years of thought to. It's maybe a better way to say this is a topic that I've spent years screwing up, and I have a slightly better answer from enough years of that. So I like to think of the operations team, the RevOps team, is like there's a number of jobs that they have to do. I would say that a handful of those jobs are reasonably well formed and understood. I try to stay out of the way, right? The systems need to work and the technology needs to be enabled. We've moved some version of corporate IT into RevOps. I have to get the right people, trust them to do it, and know that I'm not an expert in it and stay out of the way. As much as sometimes my engineering brain wants to get involved, I sort of there's a truly operational support cadence, right? That is, there's certain things we need to do from a deal desk, end of quarter, sales kickoff-y kind of stuff that just needs to happen on a regular basis. Those are things we need to do, and they're things that are operational in nature in a lot of ways, the same way that a salesperson does an operational job or a customer success person does an operational job. You wake up, you do it, you check out at 5, that kind of thing. You don't check out at 5, but if you can check out at 5, great, love it, good for you. I was never that smart or that good to pull that off. That stuff is reasonably well established and understood. The part where I've spent the most time thinking and trying different experiments to get the most out of the teams is, I think that one of the things that happens all the time in go-to-market is we're faced with a series of problems that need to be solved. This is really understood when the company is small enough and it's like search for product market fit or even search for go-to-market fit. Everyone understands most of the time their job is problem solver and the primary goal is solve problems kind of thing. At a certain point, the organization gets big enough. Maybe you've got 10, 15, 20, 50, 200 salespeople in seat. Usually happens, I would say, north of 15 salespeople. Usually that comes with 10 to 12 CS people. That's a good barometer for org size at that point. Both functional leads, and when I say functional leads, I mean the head of the marketing function, the head of the sales function, the head of the CS function, et cetera. You start to have functional leads that are not problem solvers by trade. They are more like steeped experts in their function, but you still have the same problems that need to be fixed. So for example, like the annual plan, inevitably when you need to push that number from 80% to 85 to 90%, somewhere along the line, you look at the numbers and you're like, win rate in that segment is just not what it needs to be. We need to bump win rate in that segment by 5%, basically. Let's figure out what we can do to move win rate by 5% in that segment. When you go to a functional lead and ask them to bump a number, especially when you give them a wide swath of area to think about, what I have found is that they'll come back with a host of ideas based on their previous experience. I'll give you a specific example of this. When I was at Clearbit, we had our head of demand gen and our head of the SDRs. In particular, we were seeing a drop in conversion rate from MQL to sales qualified opportunity. And so we asked the two of them, we were like, hey, take a look at this, poke around, let us know what you can find. And they came back a week later and they had 14 different ideas for how to solve this problem. Everything from changing email subject lines to increasing outbound dials. There were 14 different ideas. And I looked at that and I was like, what this tells me, and this is not an insult to these two people, is that they don't know where the problem actually is.
Yeah.
And so this is where I turned to my head of RevOps and I said, go analyze the data and be the partner for these individuals, because their job isn't the problem solving. That's your job, is go find the real problem. When you present them the real problem, I bet this list of things will shrink. Head of RevOps takes his team, they go off and they go, actually, it turns out MQL and SQL are not one stage to the next. It literally goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, basically. And they came back and they were like, actually, of 11 of these segments, 10 of them are operating perfectly. Like every conversion rate is exactly where we want it to be. The only thing that's happening is happening between C and D. We're not sure why. We took C and D to our two functional leads. That list of 14 things became 2. They knew exactly what to do to address the problem once the problem was well scoped and understood. Over the years, I have gotten to this mindset now where I believe that the most value I get out of a RevOps team is by putting capable problem solvers in that org and partnering them very closely with those functional leads. There's actually a ping pong that happens when they have to work on a problem. Like RevOps' job is identify the problem and scope it. And then sales' job is, okay, come up with the first batch of potential solutions. Then RevOps' job is to like figure out whether are those actually going to move the needle. And then they go back in implementation. And there's this back and forth that takes place. Those are the places where I've had the biggest wins, most success in getting the most out of a RevOps team.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes a lot of sense. We have 15,000 people in our RevOps co-op community. I know a lot about them, and those are the things that they're good at. Like that's essentially what you're signing up for when you get into revenue operations. You're going to be faced with a whole slew of problems every single day, every single week. Most of them you will probably never have encountered before. I want to stay in my lane and do stuff that I know what to expect. You're like, oh yeah, sign me up for that. I want to dive headfirst into that stuff. I think being a partner to the functional experts that you have is a great way to leverage your RevOps resources and get the most value out of them. If that's a great example of how to best partner, do you have any examples or things that maybe you've seen pitfalls from revenue operators that are getting in the way of not being that problem solver, that partner, or even just things that you as a CRO have maybe done, tried, experimented with before that haven't worked?
In my background, I worked with a lot of very multi-Swiss Army tool people. And then as my teams got bigger, I expected everyone to be a Swiss Army tool person. And that totally failed, which is how I ended up in this mindset of centralize that problem solving capacity within the RevOps org and like loan that out to functional leads. I think when I've seen that not work, right? So everyone has a place that makes them most comfortable, right? Their background is they were an engineer. And so like they give me Salesforce, I can write Apex code, right? Like I can knock this problem out kind of. Some people, their background was they cut territories. And so they're really good at being the right hand to the VP of sales and making them successful and happy. I think when I've seen it not work, it's when people lean too much on their background for the solution. Folks who come from the system side, like see every problem as a systems problem. Folks who come from the process side, see every problem as a process problem kind of thing. I think the other thing I'll say, and the experience that I've had in this is sometimes the functional leads in this model have this, I can solve problems. Like, what does this person do for me? How are they going to help me kind of thing? I've been lucky enough, whoever I hire into that seat, usually dissuade that opinion very quickly. It's amazing when you take someone who's smart, capable, and talented, but maybe not very data-driven or super capable of analyzing the data set, and then just loan them someone for 4 hours to work on that with them. And then they come out and they're like, this person is amazing. Like, I never want to do work without them again. I think the other failure point, the other failure mode I see is when the day-to-day operations become so demanding that no one has the brain power to work on the bigger, more complex problems.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's a staffing problem, right? Sometimes we fall into this trap of we've got to generate so many reports, we've got to generate so many documents, we've got to generate so many things that we lose sight of, is that document this week the most valuable thing that we could be doing with this set of resources? And sometimes the answer is no. And I think that's hard for someone like myself, who's often the customer of so much of that like documentation and research and report. It's hard for us to step back and ask ourselves, is this really the best use of everyone's time right now? Because it makes my job easier to run the business when I get that information. But sometimes the better use of cycles is to send those people onto other projects. And you have to be willing to step back and recognize that.
Yeah. Two things jumped out at me based on what you just said. You brought this up when you were talking about some of the functional heads being too reliant on their prior experience. I think that's also a state of mind, right? As a revenue operator, you're uniquely positioned to bring that to the table. That is your job, but that also means you are a human who can default to the things you have prior experience with and that make you feel comfortable. So be intentional about approaching those problems in that way. And I think you'll go far to being an ally to your team. One other question for you as well. As a CRO, you mentioned strategy consulting, engineering. I know you've been a director of marketing, a COO, you've held different roles and positions. Do you think people in revenue operations are well positioned to move into a CRO role at companies? And why or why not?
Broadly on the whole, let's take sort of same question, same comment as I had before, which is let's break the question down into component pieces. Right? I think of a friend of mine who was on a RevOps team and now runs a 50-person sales team. Can it be done? Yes. I think it depends on the organization, the opportunities that are afforded to you. To be perfectly frank, I didn't come up as a dyed-in-the-wool salesperson and move up through sales manager to sales director to sales whatever to get this job. Like I said, I was willing to volunteer. I ran my first sales team of 4 because I pulled the CEO aside and I was like, hey, I think we're screwing a bunch of shit up over there. And he was like, write it all down. Let me hear your thoughts. 2 months later, we let go of the guy who was running the team. And he was like, I agreed with everything you had to say. Now go implement it. I didn't know what I was doing, but we'll try. For folks that if you spend all your time in systems and day-to-day ops and deal desk and things like that, no, I don't think that positions you really well for taking over a team and taking on strategic responsibilities. But people who are problem-solving oriented and capable of understanding the business will go a long way. Exactly what that function looks like can be many things. I've seen people from RevOps go to COO. I've seen COOs run the entire org, right? I've seen people from RevOps go to CRO. My better half ran RevOps for a while at a pre-IPO company here. Her VP of RevOps boss went on and became the CEO of an internal startup, and now he's the COO running all things. So I think it's absolutely the case. You have to take on more opportunities, more responsibility, and push your boundaries of comfort if you're going to want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And I think 2 things. One, if you're in revenue operations and you enjoy the system side of things or the deal desk side of things, move towards those more, right?
Yeah.
Do the things that make you fulfilled. Do not feel like you need to be on one path and one path only. Look at your own career path and background and the career path of most people in RevOps. It's a very winding road that leads you there. Like I talked to someone who is RevOps manager the other day. His first job after college was as a geologist. He got a geology degree and then he was out doing rock stuff, whatever geologists do. And somehow now wound up as a RevOps manager at like this big software company. And yeah, like definitely like move towards the things that make you fulfilled professionally. If you're one of those problem solver types of people that spans the revenue engine from marketing to sales to success, and you understand enough about the systems and the rest of the things that go into that in the business in general to be dangerous, but also to know that you should stay out of those things. If that's the background or the mindset that you have, you're very well positioned to move into a CRO type of role. If that's the thing that makes you fulfilled. And I think for a lot of companies, having that sort of background in that seat would be very valuable.
Look, my job sucks a lot of the time. So let's not pretend there's no that one is better or worse or whatever.
Yeah.
They all have their own sets of crappy problems. It's which set of crappy problems is least crappy to you, right? I have the luxury of talking to a lot of people who have very impressive titles because we have similarly fakely impressive titles. I know plenty of people that have amazing looking lives on LinkedIn, and then you talk to them offline and they're like, oh my God, everything sucks. I'm getting yelled at in every direction. It's a reminder that life is hard and we do our best, make mistakes and learn from them. I always say before I retire, I want to be the CEO of a $20 to $100 million startup. But I think that's what I want. I could get there and hate it. I won't really know until I figure it out. The grass isn't always greener. You just have to be aware of that.
Oh yeah. I always say the grass is never greener. It's just a different shade of poop brown. Because like you said, you are just making trade-offs for certain things until you find the right balance that makes you feel fulfilled. And to hit on that last point, I tell people in RevOps and outside of RevOps this all the time. Like one of the big learnings I have in my own career as well is, and I wish I would have told myself this sooner, but give yourself permission to change your mind. So like you said, you're one of your career goals right now, be the CEO of a startup, $20 to $100 million. That is what Connor Fee wants right now. That is not necessarily going to be the same thing that Connor Fee wants tomorrow or a year in the future. That is okay. Don't feel like you need to grasp on to something you want in your career right now, whether that's within RevOps or outside of RevOps. It's okay. Change your mind. I've changed my mind a whole bunch. My first job out of college, I was a CPA doing auditing and stuff. That was horrible. I hated it. Before I got into that job, I was like, oh yeah, that looks great. I was from a small town in Wisconsin. So I was like, accountants make money. I want to be an accountant, right? I'll be a partner at these firms. I got there and I knew within a week that this was simply not going to work. So yeah, give yourself permission to change your mind. That's okay. Move towards the stuff that makes you fulfilled.
I'm a big believer in strong opinions held loosely. It's a core component of how I operate and survive my way through the world. Have an opinion, be strong about it, but don't be afraid to change it.
Yeah, I love that. One last question for you before I let you go. This is not RevOps or revenue related at all, but so every year we host annual RevOps conference. 2025, we're doing one in New Orleans. We're doing another one in Berlin. New Orleans will be in May. Berlin will be in June. So I want you to, with New Orleans, we're going to have about 300 to 350 people. Picture that you are the opening keynote speaker for RevOpsAF in New Orleans in May. You've got 350 people in the audience. We call your name. Everyone stands up, starts cheering wildly. They're super excited to hear your talk. What would be the walk-up song that you would play to either hype yourself up, hype the audience up, or just a song that you enjoy? What would be your walk-up song as you entered the main stage at the conference?
Oh my God, I was absolutely not prepared for this. One of the things that cracks me up is I've learned now that whenever you interview someone and they say that's such a great question, that's literally just their way of saying I wasn't prepared to answer this question. So I've tried to eliminate that vocabulary, and now I just say I was not prepared to answer this question. The funny thing is I want to go with White Snake, Here I Go Again on my own, because I love how the beginning of that song starts so like calm and then drops. Although I don't know that "Here I Go Again on My Own" is the message to send to 300 people as you walk out on stage. I'm in a very John Mayer kick right now. I might just pick something from record collection and play something that puts me in a fun mood before everybody goes out. One thing I do a bunch when I have sales training and coaching for different folks, especially on some of the fractional work, and I often will start any big training where I'll share music over Spotify. Or over the Zoom, just so it puts us all in a mood. Oh, this is a little bit lighter. This is a little bit more fun. So I would want to be something in that vein that's like a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun, setting the tone, if you will.
Yeah, I like those. Those are, I would say, one very good choice. I've asked a variety of people that question. Today on a webinar that I did, we had everything from "Lose Yourself" by Eminem to the song by Sia. We've had new age stuff. And then, believe it or not, one person was like, "Sound of Music." That is a great answer. You are the only person that's ever given that, but yeah, let's do that. We've actually had AC/DC. So yeah, the answers have been a very broad range, but I fully support John Mayer. Fully support it. Yeah. All right. I love that. Connor, thank you for dropping some knowledge on us, talking everything from John Mayer and your walk-up song to what a CRO really does, to how you can best leverage your RevOps team. I appreciate it, my friend. That's all I got for you, though.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode, everybody.
For more great content like this, join our community at RevOpsCoop.com and check out the links provided in the show notes.
Keep it RevOps safe, y'all.